It is important to note that we are currently covering the fundamentals and historical aspects of Freemasonry. We will reach a more in-depth discussion about the craft at a later stage. This series hopes to cover all aspects about the subject matter, including but not limited to Freemasonry, the Kabbalah, black magic, the Illuminati, atheism, the Jinn, and Zionism, just to mention a few topics. I do hope that you will be patient and focused to be able to see the bigger picture that I hope to be able to illustrate towards the conclusion of this series. With God's blessings, let us continue. Let us begin by defining a few terms. Operative Masons are the early stonemasons, more famously known for building the Gothic cathedrals, abbeys and castles of Europe. However, the first Grand Lodge of Speculative Masonry was founded in London in June of 1717. The Freemasons began to accept what is known as speculative Masons, or in other words, ordinary people who did not possess any of the stonemasons' knowledge or building construction abilities. Outsiders, or non-Masons, are labeled as profanes by the Masons. The reason why Masons use such a condescending term for non-Masons is because they do not possess the knowledge the Masons do, simply put.
And the star on his skin?
Pinnacle.
And its meaning?
Pinnacle is a pagan religious icon.
Devil worship.
So where does Freemasonry originate from? In the Cook manuscript of 1410, one of the oldest known texts which deals with Freemasonry, we read that, at the time of the construction of the Temple of Solomon, begun by King David, Solomon employed 24,000 Masons, and Solomon confirmed the rights which his father David had bestowed upon the Masons. Solomon himself taught them their methods, that is to say their traditions and practices, which are not very different than the rituals and rites practiced by today's Masons. Operative Masons who read this text saw it as a historical truth. They believed that they were applying a craft which dated back to the time of King Solomon, and which he had codified. However, the date of the construction of King Solomon's temple has not always been the key date in the Freemasons' cosmology. This central role was once given to the Tower of Babel, the Regius manuscript, which predates the Cook manuscript by 20 years, cites King Nimrod, the builder of the famous Tower of Babel, as the first and most excellent master. He it was, and not King Solomon, who gave the Masons their first charge, or in other words, their first rites, rituals, and practices. Masonic text known as the Thistle manuscript of 1756 says that King Nimrod created the Masons and gave them their signs and terms so that they could distinguish themselves from other people, or the profanes. It was the first time that the Masons were organized as a craft. It was during the early years of the 18th century that Freemasonry stopped seeing its origins in the Tower of Babel, and that King Solomon alone was considered the first Grand Master. The 18th century Masonic texts shed light on the ideas and attitudes at the time of the shift from operative Masonry to speculative Masonry. These texts are called the early catechisms. This strange and sudden shift by speculative Masons, who wanted to break away from the origins of the craft, which honored the Tower of Babel and King Nimrod, they instead preferred our wise King Solomon, or as a Mason's examination of 1723 puts it, Grand Master in his time of Masonry and architecture.